So let's talk about penis size, because this is something that men are obsessed with.
Oh, 100%.
And you mentioned earlier that you don't have like an incredibly long penis.
No, Nina Hartley said it's the most user-friendly which at the time, like before that, I was like always nervous. And then she said, I was like, well, she's everyone, so I guess it's not a bad thing.
Hey guys, it's Hink here. So I found a very interesting video. It's about a guy named Nathan Bronson. Guys, like I do not watch a lot of that type of entertainment, and so I'm not familiar with a lot of these guys. But I thought that this was in particularly very powerful because it's a more average sized dude that has had a very successful career in the industry. And so I wanted to break down some very important talking points from this video. I highly suggest you watch it. I'll have Callie leave a link in the description so you can get it uncensored. But I think there's a lot that we can learn from this like average sized guy in the industry. And so guys, before we go any further, we have to break down some stats, okay? This is one of those things where I sacrifice for the cause because I didn't know who this guy was, but in order to have an accurate opinion of him, like I needed to lay my eyes on him to see exactly what he was working with and make my own opinion. I did do a lot of like research, which is basically guys in different blogs like what LSPG or whatever that basically give their opinion. I actually asked Red Maroon what he thought about this guy's size as well. So shout out to him for helping me out on this video. In my opinion, he looks like non-bone pressed, somewhere between about 5 to maybe 5.25 inches. And bone pressed, I would say he's probably right at about 6 inches. At most, I would say maybe 6.25 inches bone pressed. Now, where am I making these conclusions? Well, guys, I did not do a deep dive. And so if you disagree, like I want to know if you actually know how big he is or whatever. But there's some tell signs, like there's a couple of clips I saw where the woman's hand. So when you have a hand and you're holding a D, you can kind of tell how big a guy is based on how much D is showing, because as you'll see here, the average size of a palm is about just shy of 3 inches. This is a 3-inch palm on average, and there's about 2 inches sticking out. You can pretty much estimate that the guy is about 5 inches visible. So that's what I did. And you also have to keep in mind that the women in corn tend to have smaller hands as it is. So that's an average of almost 3 inches. So their hand is maybe even more like 2.5 inches, okay? That's basically how I made my assumptions on his length. Now, when it comes to girth, I would say somewhere at most maybe 5 to 5.2 inches. And once again, guys, I kind of guesstimated the same thing. If you look at the women in some of these videos holding on to him, you can see that there's a lot of overlap of the finger like that. So this extra thumb here, sorry guys, I have horrible hands, but that typically means that, you know, these guys with the bigger girths, there's typically a gap in between them. And there wasn't even like the fingers were touching, it's like there was clear overlap there. That's my best guess. He's about 6 inches bone pressed by about 5 inches of girth. He's also about 5'9" inches. And so guys, if you're 6'5" on a 5'9" frame, in my opinion, that's going to look bigger than it would on somebody who is like 6 feet tall. So that could throw his proportions off. He could actually be a little bit smaller than that because he has a smaller frame and he's a smaller guy. Guys, I'm not saying that's short. 5'9" is average. I'm just saying he's not like 6'7". But guys, let's look at the average lengths. Once again, it's based on this Am I Normal paper looking at a nomogram of over 15,000 people. And guys, if there's errors in that paper, like please leave it in the comments because, you know, it is helpful to have that information so I can provide some context for future videos because people feel so strongly about D size. But the average length is about 5.17 inches with a standard deviation range and the upper end being 5.8 inches. So if you're above 5.8 inches bone pressed, you are big. I'm saying this guy is at least probably 6 inches bone pressed, maybe even 6.25 inches. So he is big. He is actually above average in length. And when it comes to erect girth, the mean value is about 4.6 inches. And I'm saying this guy is about 5 inches. Now, if you look at the range, the standard deviation range, the upper limit of that normal distribution is right at 5. And so he's still right at the upper end of 5, if not even maybe a little bigger than that. And so I would say this guy is not an average size guy. I would say this guy is above average in both length and arguably girth. So I do think that context is important.
You kind of like prove the point, because I think so many guys get in their head that like you have to have this massive, huge dick in order to be in porn, and that's like, and girls only want guys with like that big.
Yeah,
but that's not your experience.
Well, I mean, there definitely has been that experience. I met girls who are like, I'm a size queen. I'm like, cool. So we're not or we are like.
So this comment is showing that right here, that even the girls that are in corn, actually they're not like, oh my God, I have to have that monster D. Oftentimes they're craving just an average D. So oftentimes the women that are in industry that are somehow like have boyfriends, their boyfriends are of average size, guys. And I gotta like this guy's approach. You know, he'll meet a girl, she'll be like, I'm a size queen. And he'll be like, okay, so like, where does that leave us? I mean, I think that that's the approach, rather than having that like small D energy. And some girls like, I'm a size queen. And you're just like, yeah, I'm upset.
Don't do the voice.
You can't let that bother you, guys. You might have a preference for the type of woman you want, and so it's okay if she has a preference for the type of D that she wants. But those interactions are extremely rare.
The amount of times I've heard a girl say she's a size queen is, and again, that could be because they're just trying not to say it in front of me, but I've had girls tell me it maybe 4 times in 7 years.
Yeah.
And 4 different girls.
So guys, right here, this is a guy in the actual corn industry saying that he's only met a true size queen, or at least girls that say it, 4 times over the past 10 years. All you guys that are being like, oh, they're size queens, I've been with them, blah, blah, blah. I do think that those are overrepresented, okay? And I don't think these women might be true size queen. And I will also challenge these women that say they're size queen to actually take a blind measurement of what the size that they want is and then measure it. I bet you it'd be somewhere between 6, maybe 7 inches at the most in length, okay? But I could be wrong.
So most of the time, because girls have to deal with these massive, like Dredd, who is a lovely person and a lovely individual, such a sweetie. Yes. But in general, it's like when girls have to deal with like doing that, it's like they have to mentally prepare themselves.
Yeah.
It'd be like me having to jump out of a 17-story building. You know, it's like I got to kind of get in the right mindset to do that. You know, instead of just jumping off my fence.
This is what I think also gets underreported. Now, if you go to that like Big D problem subreddit, I'm sure they talk about it all the time. But when you are well endowed, guys, it actually takes a lot of work in some cases, depending on your size, to actually have a successful encounter. Usually takes a lot of preparations, oftentimes additional lubrication. And quite often, guys, women will describe it as painful, especially at first if they're not used to that. This is kind of the extreme when he's talking about somebody like Dredd, that is like Febreze bottle shoddy here. There are literally articles like this one here where women actually break up with the men that they have because their Ds are too big. It is not as rare as you think. A lot of these studies that say women are dissatisfied with the size of their partner, it doesn't mean the partner's too small. Oftentimes it means the partner is too big and sex is too painful.
They don't have to think about it with me. It's like we can just have a good time. I can bang them the fuck out. I can touch back. You know, I can get my balls to touch it. You know, it's a nice thing.
Here he's basically saying that it's nice being his size, which once again, I'm arguing is above average, but just slightly above average. That he gets to do what he wants. He gets to go hard in the paint, if you will. Guys, I'm not trying to make this my own personal, like, big, deep problems, but there are times when, like, there's certain positions that I can actually go too deep and it's painful for my partner. My favorite animal is our doggy. Sometimes I go to pet a doggy and it's just like, nope, like, that's not going any further, or that's painful. And I don't like that. I don't want to inflict pain on my partner. I mean, and I'm not even the size of some of these, like, massive stars. And so, guys, just try to have some perspective and honestly appreciate the size that you do have and what you are able to do with it.
Having that much blood go to my dick, having to push that, all that, and worry about that massive hog all the time seems stressful.
So guys, personally here, I think that's a little cope. Like, I think that is basically an urban legend as far as, oh my gosh, if your D is too big, you might get lightheaded because all your blood is rushing to it, derp. I don't think that's the case. For me personally, I have added basically a third, like 33% volume to my D with the size that has been increased as far as length and girth. And I have never been like, whoa, I'm starting to get lightheaded. Would you argue that maybe like it does take me a little bit longer to get erect just because there is a little bit more volume to fill? Maybe. But guys, like the actual blood pressure and the arteries and like the veins dilating, the amount of pressure going in there, I don't know if you guys have ever actually seen an artery being severed and see how like fast and how far the blood squirts out, but it is ridiculous the amount of pressure. And to think that there is a like meaningful and visual difference between like arterial filling of something as honestly proportionally to the rest of your body, the size of your D, to me, that's kind of like ludicrous. And I think that that's stupid and asinine when people actually say that. But you know, whatever, that's just me. I'm not trying to like throw shots at other people. But I think that this segment in general is kind of copey in my opinion.
It's not something I'd want. It seems sad, but it's like every guy thinks that's what they need. I mean, that's what I thought for years.
Yeah.
I thought every black dude was better at sex than me, and I will never have a big enough dick to please a woman. Mm-hmm. That's how I used to think.
Isn't it interesting how the porn industry made you feel different about that?
What also is the one that made me feel like that?
Oh.
Yes.
For me personally, I love how relatable this guy is. I mean, he actually seems like a nice guy. He actually seems like very funny, very witty. I mean, he's a pretty good looking guy too. Like, you know, I don't go that way, but whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is that I relate to him, and he's saying how Basically, he thought that black dudes were always better at sex, and guys, like, you know, whatever, you could argue whatever, I don't care what race you think I am, but, you know, I always assumed that the darker skinned black dudes had massive hogs and were way better at it than I was. And also I assumed that, I won't say that I will never have a D big enough to please a woman, but I definitely thought that I was undersized and I would have a hard time pleasing a woman, which is just factually not true. Hopefully you guys that have seen enough of my videos about real size statistics know that is not the case, and yet you actually don't need that much size in order to please a woman or man for that matter.
Oh, and I've done that a handful of times where I'm in these scenes and you put me in there with the bigger guys and I'm like, is doing casting here? Yes, you want to go railed out? No problem. Hey, you want a big, strong looking dude? No problem. Why you put me with Alex Jones? I love Alex. I love Isaiah. I love all these guys. They're great. But I'm like, why? Oh yeah, that's who else was in it. It was Alex Jones, Isaiah Bambino, and Nick Mason. Yeah, so I'm like, into me. I'm like,
Okay.
So I just thought that this was kind of funny. Like I would actually be curious to know like why they are casting him here, and maybe it's for contrast. But like if you're gonna put him with a guy that has like massive hog and then have him in there, you know, I don't know. That's kind of setting him up to fail, because people are gonna be like, oh, look at those guys and look at that guy with the small D. Even though once again proportionally he has an average D, it's just maybe the angles, lighting, and the size difference that makes him look proportionally much smaller. But guys, you also have to have some perspective here. These are the freaks of the freaks. It's like, you know, I'm a pretty tall guy. Like, you know, I'm 6'5", okay? But if I were to go to an NBA game and walk onto the court and, you know, I've met some of these NBA players, it makes me feel small. It makes me feel like a very small human. Same thing with meeting people like offensive linemen. And so it's all about perspective, guys. And one of the most important things here is comparison is the thief of joy. I said that begin. Callie, please put it on the screen. Comparison is the thief of joy. So this dude is confident, he has a great life, you know, he has a great career, but yet he puts himself next to these guys and then he starts comparing, and that's when he starts being like, F this.
So it's just fucking baby Nathan and all these fucking massive cogs. And I'm just like, what the Because, and again, I know that I don't have a baby, but it's just in general, when you're
to compare.
Yeah,
yes,
when you're comparing on camera, it looks awful. But also at that same moment, I'm sitting there and I'm like hip to hip and I'm like, everyone's bigger than me, but it's not that bad. But visually, it looks terrible.
So I love how we close kind of with this last segment here, and maybe I'll have to go back and watch the whole podcast. The thing that I don't like is how he says, like, he refers to himself as like Baby D Nathan. I mean, I get what he's saying and he's trying to be funny, but like, here's a dude with an above average D that sees these dudes that are bigger than him and then starts saying, oh, well, he has a baby D. Like, that's absolutely not the case. We've already been over the stats. So I really don't like that, and that kind of is dysmorphia. But once again, if I was around a bunch of offensive linemen and NBA centers, I would start to think that I was short. Callie, put it on the screen of Wembanyama next to like these other like huge NBA players, and you can see that even though these NBA players are huge, 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", next to Wemby, they all look tiny, okay? And it's kind of the same thing here, because you're with these guys that are also the like 1 in a billion sized guys. If you listen closely, he also talks about how, like, yeah, at certain angles they look a lot bigger than him, but then when he's standing beside them and looking down, he's like, hey, these guys aren't that much bigger than me. You have to understand the difference between being like average and like very big or even huge is not that big of a gap, especially when you're talking about the standard deviation values. And so much of the industry is using different like shadow and lighting and different angles. And guys, even with this Nathan Bronson guys, there are a couple of scenes when they angle up from like the bottom. I promise you guys, I wasn't like, oh my gosh. Like, I just saw a couple quick scenes, but like, dude looked actually very big. Like, very big. I was like, damn, that dude is huge. And then there's other scenes where I see from different angles and I'm like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, he's big, but he's not like that big. So a lot of it is angles and lighting, guys. So just don't be fooled. So guys, what are my takeaways from this video? Number one, if you feel like you must watch some sort of corn, like, please watch more average sized guys like this, even though I still think this guy is technically big and I will die on that hill. I do think it can help to see that rather than dudes like Dredd that are legitimately like 9'7", you know, I don't know his measurements, but please don't see that guy and think like, oh, that guy has an average D. That's not average. He's well above average, guys. Like, I will, like, fight me in the comments. I mean, seriously, I do want to know your comments. I'm joking about the fighting thing, but that dude is above average. And so if you are smaller than him, I don't want you thinking that you're small because He's claiming that he's an average size star, even though he's big. Maybe for the industry, he's more average size. And I think most importantly, this guy has a very fulfilling career. He seems to be very confident. I mean, he appears to be happy. I don't know this man, but he has a very good sex life. And he's dated actually like a lot of fairly famous people, I think, so I heard. And all of that is without being 8x6, guys. So just please have an understanding. And I can't tell you how many times I've said it, but like, you are so much more, there's so much more life than the size of your D. So please don't forget that. But guys, I really want to know what you think about this. Am I way off with this guy? Do you think that this guy is actually average or whatnot? I want to know. Guys, I mentioned how I put on additional size. I did it. Try to use only science-based techniques. If you're interested in learning how I did it based on real science principles, my link for my courses in the description below. Remember, guys, be the best version of yourself. There's nothing wrong with self-improvement, but you are enough just as you are. I promise, guys. All right, until the next one, guys. Peace and love.
Dr. Hink got the plug on the health, yeah. Got you thinking about your wealth, yeah. In his office, no stealth, yeah. Pinnacle of that below the belt, yeah. Checks and balance, he's managing. Working miracles, no damage. Got you covered, no panicking. Steady calm. In the clinic, no vanishing. Yeah, with Doc Hink, it's the way back.